What has happened, Post Shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. I'm very lucky today to have pinned down a very busy lady out of Montreal, Quebec, the lovely Kate Boushel. Kate and I have got I think the very first time that we met was a long time ago, 2015. We were in Nicaragua together. And I'm just playing around with a few things as I'm trying to talk because I'm trying to fix a few things because I screwed up a few things, but I'm going to fix it on the fly because that's the sort of person that I am. And I'm going to leave Kate in the green room for a little bit longer while I fix this so that I can fix all that. And I don't know why I've done this all screwy. I'm usually so good at this. But Kate is a driving force behind the Montreal cocktail scene. She was part of the creation of the Montreal cocktail. And I want to really get down to the nuts and bolts because I think for anybody who's outside of Quebec or outside of really Canada, don't understand how hard hit Quebec and Montreal have been. Like places have been completely shut down since September with no chances of patios, which is just mental for me, especially going into summer. But we are looking up, and I'm looking forward to seeing Kate's outlook over the next couple of months or next 6 to 12 months because that's how long it's going to take to recover. So welcome, Kate.
Hello.
You're doing some stuff in the background as well. You're tying off some things as you guys were chatting to me. I put my phone away now because I've already got text messages in this morning. I'm like, I really got to answer this, but I got to focus. And I'm so ADHD that I'm like, I can do that text. I can do this. I can do that. I'm like, no.
Literally, I was like, I'm in a green room right now. I have 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's all about you right now. So, how have you been? You're always super jovial. I actually don't think that I've ever seen you in a funk. You're always super positive and always with a massive smile on your face. And so, how have you been over the last 12 months?
Up and down. You would have definitely found me in a bit more of a funk than I think you've ever seen. No, I reserve those moments for like one-on-one. You know, I don't think that it's useful either. I think I've always been a fairly positive individual. And I think that, you know, when doing especially these things, I don't think that it's necessarily massively useful to bring up and drudge up all the negative of situations. So I live those quite personally. I've had many, but I live alone. So no one has had to endure them too much. That's kind of good. I think mostly Christina Vera and Tara Fugner have been on the receiving end of my personal blowouts. But like as you just mentioned, it's been a really rough go for Quebec and Montreal specifically over the last little bit. So we were closed from March to end of June last year. We were lucky enough to be reopened with, 50% capacity, all of the health measures in place. And we were shut down again at the end of September. And we've been essentially only solely open for takeaway since September 20th, 2020. So we're just here waiting. And luckily, we do see a light at the end of the tunnel. There's nothing obviously certain, but it's somewhere in the realm of like first week of June to third week of June or so, somewhere in that reality. So
why do you think Montreal was so hard hit?
Well, government definitely plays a big role in that, mm-hmm. Poor management in terms of planning and in terms of communication in order to actually kind of like get everyone on board with specific constraints and rules and regulations. We all kind of felt that it was going to last that much longer around Christmas time, around the holidays. Because they essentially went back and forth between allowing larger family gatherings and were really super weird about it. And then essentially when just before the holidays, they said, no, finally, no holiday get-togethers, but obviously people did anyways. And then it flipped from there. And there's really been absolutely no care for our industry in general. right? Like we still are not allowed to do to-go cocktails with alcohol in them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also been like really, really difficult, especially for establishments that are predominantly bars. So restaurant licenses, they are allowed to sell wine and beer to go, and still no spirits. But bar licenses aren't allowed to, but you can be a restaurant and have a bar license, which was the case for us. So it was a really rough go, but we were really lucky. We have in the Barroco Group, we have three strong restaurants through which we operate takeaway, and through those three, we've essentially managed to funnel a joint Milky Way cocktail and Atwater Cocktail Club cocktail program. So it's through those venues, and we also, do a lot of side contracts on the side with companies and corporate, that are looking to do something a little different for their employees.
So are your cocktail kits the same as what we have to do in BC right now, where you have to do full sealed bottles in a
We're just
you can't do it all?
We're not allowed to sell any spirits.
Oh wow, that sucks.
Yeah.
Especially with the fact that everything has to go through the SAQ, and I can understand when Ontario did it because everything has to be bought through the LCBO, so it makes sort of sense. For us, we're sort of pushing for it, but we have a really great craft distillery movement here, and they can get shipped to us direct, and they've stepped up. Like craft distilleries have been packaging in literally whatever we want to be packaged. Like we need 100 ml bottles. Okay, cool. Here's a case of 100 ml bottles of gin to do cocktail kits with. So
I know that a lot of brands, even in Ontario, they've hopped on the 200 ml wagon for their small bottles for cocktail kits, but now they're allowed to do cocktail
which I really just want. I want that so bad.
Yeah. So no, our situation is much closer to say Nova Scotia. That right now they're doing a huge push because they were just shut down again, and they're pushing for to-go cocktails. Our push really led nowhere, so we're still, at a crossroads. I'm just waiting to reopen.
I've pitched this question to a few people. I've pitched I'm pitching this to a few people. Do you think that the government completely underestimates just the impact of what the hospitality industry does to the gross profit of the province, and how much money and how many employees the industry actually has in it, and then also how much money and taxes and everything brings into the government? Do you think they completely underestimate just how impactful not helping out the restaurant industry is?
100%. Definitely. I mean, it is clear cut. Yes. We are such an insanely large vehicle for employment. And obviously, because of that, the federal government this year has completely been has completely stepped in with programs in order to continue financing essentially people who found themselves without a job in our industry and can't necessarily switch over. I would have loved to, find a new calling and change jobs. But then what happens to our industry once we reopen and all of those people have found other jobs, and then we end up with a complete lack of human potential in terms of hiring, right? We see it in the United States right now. So many cities and so many establishments are struggling to find workers. And I really I'm really grateful that we've had programs like the Canadian, the benefits response funding in order to actually palliate for that. Because it was what am I going to do if I'm, we're 20, in reality, we're 5,000 bars and restaurants that all of a sudden tomorrow morning are struggling to find workers. All in one go. And it's all in one go, right? And we're not talking about, a little bit here and a little bit there when we're normally looking to pad our staff for summer, just busy months.
Yeah, I've been talking to my staff about that as well, because I feel like even though it's going to be a progressive thing over 6 weeks, even though it's going to be progressive, like reopening slowly to full capacity over like 6 to 8 weeks, that's not much time to like find staff, train staff, like put the job ads out, get resumes in. Like the government might see the 6 to 8 weeks being like, oh, that's plenty of time for you guys. I'm like, yeah, but if I have to like find 2 more servers, and I've got a small team, so I'm lucky, but like for you, like where you're basically starting at zero, we're still open for outdoor dining here. Like it's 6 to 8 weeks is not that's quick, like 2 weeks for the job posting, get the resumes in, get that rolling, do 2 weeks worth of interviewing, and then before you know it, you're open. You're like, I got 50 green staff who have never carried a tray before.
Yeah. A great example, what was it, last month? Was it last month or now 2 months ago? Time flies. In Toronto, when they were told, oh, you can reopen in 48 hours, and then all of a sudden here they are. Everyone's struggling to rehire absolutely everyone, only to be shut down less than a month later again.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, it's completely unrealistic in the ways that our provincial governments are dealing with and understanding the general impact on each city of our industry. Right? Like our industry has such a tremendous impact in so many ways.
I think it's the misunderstanding of like just how many people are like super part-time in our industry, like that college kid who comes in and does dishwashing on Fridays and Saturday nights. They don't understand like that person is a person in the organization that is very integral on Friday, Saturday nights. Yes, they're only there for 2 days a week. And every other industry is like, no one in the car industry works 2 days a week, or the oil industry just rolls out for 2 days a week. They're like, I don't understand this. Even retail to a certain degree. But we're going to get back to COVID. I'm curious. I'm a massive
Thank you, Drow, by the way.
What's that? Oh yeah.
Thank you, Drow, for the vote of confidence on our cocktail kits.
I'm curious about that. We're going to get back into that. But I'm a massive comic book nerd, and I'm always curious about people's origin stories. Like, how did you get in the game? Because you've been in it for a while now. I don't mean to say it like you've been in this for a while.
So I started originally when I was in school, like most of us, an easier job. It felt also way more natural than just working in a clothing shop or, in a retail setting. I've never been really one for sales. I've always been more like PR. So that's how it all started. I used to work at a wonderful little pizzeria, which ends up tying back with us opening Fugazi 2 years ago. But I used to work at a little pizzeria on the South Shore of Montreal, and that's where I started off. And the team was like absolutely amazing. It was, I know that we try and steer away now from that kind of verbiage, but it really did feel like a family, right? Like the owners were much older. The staff was also a lot older. Some had kids. Some didn't. I was one of the younger ones, and they really kind of brought me in and taught me a lot about, teamwork and how to be the staff on which everyone can rely, because you can also rely on everyone, right? So that kind of like really important aspect. And that's how I started. And then when I moved to Montreal to be closer to university, I ended up switching over to a bar setting, which I absolutely loved. It was so much fun. It was like, what do you do after work? And I was always there pretty much like Thursday through Sunday. And then every now and again, I'd be there on a Monday or whatever. But, and I absolutely loved it. But at the time I was studying political science, and I think everyone kind of had this understanding, including myself, that I would end up in politics at some point in my life.
I can see that.
I was always a very political person, and which I kind of did. I ended up leaving the industry in order to work full time within our student government at Concordia University. And then I represented students on various levels within national and provincial student organizations. I did a lot of government relations, and ended up doing a master's in public relations management. And I ended up working in marketing and worked in, did PR, public relations for a variety of groups. And so that kind of clearly took me away from this industry. But I ended up at one point I was working for myself, and one of my old high school friends, Pierre-Olivier Trempe, called me up and was like, Kate, I started this cocktail competition. This was Made with Love back when. And he was like, I need someone to help me out with PR. And I was like, you know what? Okay. So that was one of my first kind of forays back into the industry. And then I started doing some PR contracts for really amazing people who were launching small restaurants. And that kind of just brought me all back and made me realize that what I love about PR was always the personal relation. And it was always more about community relations rather than running after media and pushing for a byline and whatever. And that was always the part that kind of annoyed me. It was like more of that sales aspect. And I realized that one of the things I missed most was being in a restaurant, being in a bar. I was always really good at it. And I convinced my parents, because at first they were really like, what? You want to go back to a bar? After all of these studies? And I was like, yeah, I know. And when they came and saw me at the first restaurant where I ended up working again, this was back in 2013, they were like, yeah, we don't understand why we ever doubted you. It's you. It's you. So, and it's been kind of like from there ever since. I just kind of never looked back. And, you know, when something's just right, good things start happening very naturally and organically. And yeah, so from there.
When did you get part of the Barroco Group?
Yeah, so yeah, the first restaurant that I ended up at was Deca 77, and they gave me a first chance kind of back in the industry, because it's not always obvious being like, yeah, will you hire me to bartend? And then they're like, when's your experience? You're like, it's back 8 years ago, you know, and then they're like, okay, like, how good are you for real? And it was kind of like hopping back on a bike, right? It's like, first few shifts are a little rocky, and then after that, everything kind of starts flowing. But and then I got a really great opportunity from Graham Warner, Val Chagnon, and Giulio Mendi, who took me on and brought me into the Mal Nécessaire family at that time. And so they're the ones who brought me into the, like, how to organize your station more efficiently, speed, like, if I'm a speedy bartender today, it is 100% thanks to my experience at Mal Nécessaire. Doing things like Drunken Masters, which was like this speed bartending competition that we would do, like, what was it, like every 3 months or something like that. And yeah, just kind of naturally after about 1.5 years there, Christophe Baudouin was about to open Atwater Cocktail Club. And I kind of just felt like I needed to kind of switch it up. And I wanted to go into a bit more of that kind of, instead of the more tropical kind of style from Mal Nécessaire, wanted to go into a bit more of that, like, soigné, you know, I don't want to say proper, because, like, I mean, Mal Nécessaire is definitely a proper cocktail bar. But yeah, I miss Drunken Masters too, though. It's not that it's more of a proper cocktail bar, but like in that kind of sense where, like, everything is like very tailored, very chic, and there's just something a bit less like go, 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 go. So I kind of really wanted to kind of do that switch, so I did, and yeah.
Although I have been in an ACC on a Friday night. An ACC on a Friday night is a little, it's insane. Like, I think I was there. Last time I went to Montreal was for World Class.
Yeah,
it was one of those trips, and I remember walking with Demas, and it was like 12 o'clock at night, and Thomas is behind the bar, and Thomas and I are the same height, so obviously in a crowd of normal sized people, we just contact Ty straight away, and it is high volume in that bar. Like, it gets crammy in there.
It's high volume, definitely, but there still is a lot of opportunity for direct contact and a lot of still, like, good conversation, if you will, with guests. And I think it's because behind the bar in this circumstance were coupled with our bar backs.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot more opportunity for point contact, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas at Mal, it's like you're either at the service station or you're at the bar station, and then you're on the floor, and like it's just a completely different style.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like saying the difference between like that tropical bar and a speakeasy. Atwater Cocktail Club, for all intents and purposes, a lot of people like to call it a speakeasy because you enter through like a random door in a back alley. Yeah, but in every other way, we are not a speakeasy.
Oh no, the back bar is mental. Some of the stuff that I saw, like I literally, and as you said about customer touches, I think I ordered a drink 6 feet away from the bar with Thomas and pointed, and it was like 3 bottles far right in the back. And I think it was because you had Hacienda de Chihuahua, Sotol, or something like that on the back bar. And I was like, and I literally did hand movements to him. He's like, okay, cool. And he sent it off, and then it passed through the crowd, and I got a drink. And yeah, it was kind of, it was just an experience. And I was like, oh, okay. Because Montreal's always been such a quick trip for me. It's always been there for an event or there for something. So it's like, okay, we've got to cram in 8 bars in a space of 12 hours or 24 hours at there, and you got to try and see everywhere I can possibly go. And I did Milky Way as well.
Mm-hmm.
But that was on a nice quiet Sunday afternoon, which was quite enjoyable. So after ACC, how did the group seems to have expanded quite quickly?
Yeah, so
and your role as well.
Atwater Cocktail Club opened in 2016. In June of 2016, and Milky Way, which opened at the same time as the restaurant Foie Gras. At that time, we only had Barroco restaurant and Boushel restaurant in Old Montreal. And then we would have celebrated 2 years in January for Milky Way Cocktail Bar and Fugazi Pizzeria. Fugazi Pizza. I always say pizzeria. I don't know why. But yeah, so we would have celebrated 2 years, which we did not because we closed, but only because we were not open. But yeah, so it's been 2 years as of so 2019, and the role itself, we created it as we were getting ready to open Milky Way, because we realized that there was a lot of tie-ins that we wanted to make sure that we did. It's nice to know that the two cocktail bars are distinct in many ways, but in the end, they're managed by the same owners, which means that a lot of the organizational aspect of the bars is going to be very similar. And at the time, our head bartender at Atwater Cocktail Club, Jérémy Bourgeois, we transitioned him over to Milky Way. And so it kind of like, we needed to make sure that there was continuity, but at the same time, I didn't want to just necessarily manage one bar. And I'd already very much unofficially taken over the role of for everything education. Mm-hmm. I was always the one that pushed for trainings. I organized the trainings, and this was always done on my own time. And I just kind of naturally did that. And then finally we were just like, you know what? It makes sense. Chris is becoming far too busy of an owner in order to continue handling day-to-day like menu changes, spirit lists, inventory, all those things. So essentially I just kind of like recreated my position out of it. So I just kind of sat down with them and I was like, these are the things I really like. These are the things I'm good at. These are the things you all love me for. And so let's just make it official.
Was Milky Way one of your very first like hands-on build-outs for a bar?
Atwater Cocktail Club too.
At Water Cocktail Club as well, because Milky Way that's a fun space. Like I don't think there's many spaces that you can sort of trip upon like Milky Way. Like I walked up with no expectations. Like again, it's sort of like it's like ACC, and you walk into the store and you're like, oh, upstairs, and then all of a sudden the black lights are there, and you're like, okay, and then you walk into the room and it's like the beautiful beautiful skylight with the ferns around. You're like, okay, I this is a cool like space away from space.
Yeah, it's so funny. The group works a lot with the Goli brothers, who are a designer and architects, and they're absolutely wonderful. And it's like they just jump in with whatever we kind of, we say, like, oh, we want to play a space where, it's kind of like taking you away from your daily grind, and you're walking through this entirely different zone before getting into this other universe, essentially, right? And that really is what Milky Way kind of is. It's like you walk in from the street and you're like, where am I going? What is this? And you walk up and you're like, why are there black lights?
Yeah. I took a slow-mo video as I walked in because it was just, it's kind of awe-inspiring. And in BC, we have some weird rules about upstairs bars. And so, like, there's a lot of different rules about, especially here in Victoria, because of we're on the earthquake fault line of the San Andreas Fault. And so we have to be seismically upgraded and places upstairs and disability access and all these different things. So usually we don't have a lot of upstairs spaces in Victoria because of grandfathering. So you've transitioned from PR agent to bartender to like group beverage manager. What were some of the things that sort of caught you off guard when you were sort of making these transitions, especially to like, because going from like looking after ACC, one team, one bar, one inventory, all that sort of stuff, to going, I'm really passionate about like spreading the love and helping everybody. What were the big hurdles that you were like, oh shit, I didn't expect that? Like, how many people, like, you have a big staff when you start looking at that, and then there's different styles of bars and restaurants within the group as well, which I always find is a little bit different as well. As like, oh, that bar, we don't really do much with that bar. Like, that's a good wine program, and that's what we do, simple cocktails. And then ACC and Milky Way. What were some of the hurdles? Because I think a lot of young bartenders, and that's where I want to sort of bring value to this, they always have this linear line of where they go from, oh, I'm a bartender to a bar manager, and then obviously I got to go open my own bar. And there's such a big gap of things that you can do in between those two things. What was your sort of not misconceptions, but like, what was the like, oh shit, I didn't expect that?
I didn't expect at first for things to fall through cracks. And it's okay because it happens. The important thing is to like recognize what fell through a crack, why it did, and then figure out a solution for that why in order for it not to happen again, right? I mean, like, sometimes it's about realizing that you're putting in too much focus on one aspect of the job. And then it's like, oh yeah, it's because I am not currently trusting that other people are there to actually pick that one up, right? So it's like the concept of delegating is a really important one at this level. And it's really great because I'm forever lucky that Thomas Yeo was looking to move to Montreal when he was, because it was exactly at the time that Milky Way was opening, that my position started, and that we needed someone to take the helm of ACC. And he is wonderful, so wonderful on so many levels. And he's so very talented. And it's been absolutely nothing but a pleasure working with him. And I know that I can count on him for so many things, right? And then it's like reminding him that he can also count on some of the staff in order to kind of, pick up what he can't necessarily juggle. Mm-hmm. And it's like just, it's kind of like having that broad view, and it's understanding that the higher up that you go, some of the details are no longer yours to deal with. So,
you can't control everything.
You can't control everything. And the more you try controlling everything, the more intense your tailspin.
So let's talk about the next 6 to 12 months in Montreal and in your group. What's the plan? Like, I know that we said at the very start that you're thinking second, third week of June. That's when we're thinking that we're going to get indoor dining back, I hope, after the May long weekend, because then they'll wait for 2 weeks after that to see how the cases go, so on and so forth.
Yep.
So what it's always that way. It's like right now for
They're
us
like,
in
there's a long
BC,
weekend. Oh, we can
yeah.
expect there to be some movement.
Yeah, right now in BC, they're saying May 25th we're going to be reopened, and everybody's like, yeah, but you haven't said how or when or what capacity are we going to be at 50%? As more people get immunized, is there a sliding scale of reoccupancy, I suppose, inside? Because I really want my inside dining back so bad. I've got 18 seats right now, and I've got a 75 seat lounge, and I furloughed myself to make sure that my team got enough hours and they were looked after, and I just do the little things in the background. So what's the next 6 to 12 months? Obviously, you're basically restarting engines now with like you said, hiring staff back and all that sort of stuff. So have you guys got a plan for the next 6 to 12 months on how everything's going to roll back out and get back to normal?
Well, one of the first things that we did was reapproached all of our furloughed staff to find out who's coming back, who wants to come back, who can come back, but there are potential contingencies on like the when. And it's always been about like consistently communicating with them as well. So started with that. And then we were able to figure out like, okay, so we're going to need a new bartender at Milky Way because someone is moving. Okay, marvelous. Awesome. Now we know that. Or so that was like, I think the first major important step. We've also been doing a lot of work around the bars, fixing things because, you know, I mean, it's a living, breathing establishment. There are loads of things potential.
Can I just jump in there real quick? When it came to staff, what did you have the majority of your staff come like say, yes, I'm coming back in some capacity?
We were so lucky.
At
for ACC, I think if we haven't found over the last week, the only thing that we're missing is I think someone on the floor in terms of floor staff, and then bar is all coming back. A Milky Way, it's just one bartender and a bar back that we need to rehire because 2 people are moving, and then floor staff is all coming back.
Oh wow!
So it's like we're so lucky. Because it could have totally gone a very different way, right?
Because I've talked to a lot of managers and owners who are complaining about staff not wanting to come back. And my first question is like, have you been talking to them during the pandemic? And they're like, no. So I'm like, so you furloughed your staff and then you haven't said a word to them since you furloughed them and you want them to be loyal to you and your brand.
So we were lucky when we closed initially in September. We knew it was kind of coming, and Chris and I were talking. And up until December, every week I did staff trainings.
Wow!
So I went in, prepared tasting kits, and it was like, this week we're going to do vodka 101.
Nice
vodkas. Let's chat vodka. And I was like, a way of keeping everyone really engaged. And then came the holidays and my numbers were really massively dwindling. And I was like, okay, so people right now are at that kind of like quota. And I was also getting really emotionally exhausted at that time as well. So it was like a really good and a very important break. And then I kind of stopped with that since 2021, not because I didn't want us to continue, but it was just like, we've been jerked around so much in terms of like, are we reopening? Are we not reopening? And trying to focus on all of the changes and all of the organization that we want to like ameliorate around the group, that I was like, you know what, we're going to focus on this. And then once that's done, then we can start that up again. And at the same time, there were a lot of staff that were just like, I'm back in school now and I'm doing a lot of this. So it was like, just not that there was less interest, because in some aspect there was, but it was really solely just because while we are closed, they were taking that opportunity to focus on a lot of other things in their personal lives, right?
Yeah, and there's a certain point where they're like, I want to invest things because I've got time, and then all of a sudden they're like, no, I don't really have much time because I've been waiting and waiting. So it's anticipation of coming back. So they want to get training done. Then the anticipation sort of dwindles as things get screwed around. You're like, I just want to relax a bit.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like it was October through December. That was 4 months, and then 5, 6, every additional month that passes people are just like, you know what? Call me when we do reopen. I will be there. But like between now and then, you know, people going out, you know, almost every day on like 20-kilometer bike rides. You know, they don't necessarily want to be at home doing absolutely nothing. And also the amount of energy, you know, maybe I think maybe the first thing was like the fact that we were doing it every week, the tasting. It was a lot. Like, you know, we're getting for like 25, 30 tasting kits and dropping them off at like 3 different pickup points around the city. And
that is a lot.
But it was awesome. And I'm glad we did do it because I mean, we still did cover a solid, what was it, 12 or 15 different trainings, right? You know, I mean, like from brandy to gin to vodka to cognac to, you know, name it. So that it's never lost. And that, as you said, you know, it allowed us to stay in contact and continue talking to people on a regular basis. And they know that they can call us for anything. And now looking forward, it's great. So like as of like next week, you know, even if it's just for like a few hours here and there are a few people coming in and we're going to be doing like, you know, let's inventory everything, make sure that we have enough tools, make sure, you know, the other day I realized that I had no idea where our hand citrus press went at Milky Way. And I was like, okay, so we've got to order that, but that might not be the only thing that just disappeared. So how are we on glassware? What do I need to order? And so if we're multiple people doing that, and I have a few hours here and there for other people, that means that I have that time in my schedule to focus on a few other things that are really important. And at the same time, it's allowing them to slowly come back and kind of get into the groove again, being around other people, working, you know, I mean, we haven't done that since September.
Do you think that's going to be a hard thing for people to get used to again? Like it's one, even for me, I don't mind serving tables and stuff, but having that connection over the bar, I think it's going to be difficult, especially for people in Toronto and Montreal, like the East Coast peeps of like actually having conversations. Like, you know, when we have conversations like, oh, so we talk about sports, we talk about this, none of that's been happening. All that's really been happening is the pandemic. And you really don't want to start delving into how was your pandemic, because that's a horrible lead in, like sitting down, enjoying a cocktail. So how was your pandemic?
Horrible. Horrible. I mean, I think in June, when we originally reopened at the end of June, there was a bit of that happened because, you know, I mean, it was the exit of the first round of closures. But like this time around, I think it's just going to be like, oh my God, we're so happy that everything's open again. You know, people are just going to be really excited. And yeah, I know that I have a few scenario schedules, especially for Milky Way. And I say especially for Milky Way just because right now I don't actually have like a head bartender at Milky Way. So I'm kind of like a bit of doing both. I have really amazing people that I think it just kind of happened that way. Jérémy Bourgeois moved back to France in end of July. And we just kind of figured like, we don't know when we're reclosing. Let's like kind of manage right now with that. And so anyways, doing scheduling. And I was like, okay, you know what? Let's do these schedules where you don't work more than like 2 days, like 2 days together. Like there's always going to be like a break somewhere, and that your shifts might be a little shorter because, well, obviously also we don't know, we have no idea. Are we going to be open till 9 p.m., till 11 p.m., a.m.? Like what's the reality going to be? We don't know. So I have a few little scenarios, but it's like, if we're opening till 9, then you can do an open close, no problem. Right. I mean, it's not super exhausting in that scenario, but if we're opening anytime later, then it's like, you haven't been on your feet for that long in one period of time in so long. So it's like, how can we be kinder to how can we help you be kindest to your body and make sure that your brain and like, you don't exhaust yourself so quickly that you can't have those conversations, that you lose focus. I mean, like so many of us in the industry suffer from at least some form of mild ADHD. Right. And Like, let's not even get into how many actually are diagnosed or undiagnosed dyslexics, right?
Mm.
And it's like those situations become exacerbated when we're tired, when we're exhausted. And so it's like, okay, how can we like make sure that we are as awake as possible and that we're going to be functioning in a way that we are our best selves while we are there? And I think that that's going to be really important. Like shorter shifts, not necessarily 3 days, 4 days in a row, where we give ourselves the time to like calm down.
Just ease back into it. It would be a little bit of stimulus overload, like ACC on a Friday night packed again for the very first time. That would just be like, it's just a little bit, the noise, the sounds, the lights, that would just be a lot to take in for the very first time after like 12 months.
Loads. Yeah. Thank goodness for 50% capacity in that respect, right? I mean, like that is the one thing that allows us to ease back into things.
So for operations sake,
we have no idea. Is it even going to be like 50% or is it going to be 25%?
Yeah.
No,
who knows?
The government says absolutely nothing.
Sounds about right. Obviously, a lot of the restaurants have pivoted to takeout. Have you, going forward, is there going to be, apart from like what we just talked about with scheduling, is there going to be any changes to the way the venues operate? Almost, I hate to touch wood, but like almost to preemptively, if it happens again, like if a lockdown happens again, is there anything, or is it just going to be full steam ahead the way it was before the pandemic and just go from there?
Yeah, we're gonna go full steam ahead, kind of like we did at the end of June. It'll be that, and because the way we had to pivot, the way we had to pivot in March, really, and then again in like first week of October. We now know exactly how to do it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And the same staff that had to do it in March did it again in October. And none of them are going anywhere for the moment anyways. So, if ever it does have to happen again, it'll once again super quickly, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think that, and we've been really lucky because when you think about it, how perfect was it that in 2019 we opened a pizza joint?
Yeah.
What better thing for takeaway food than pizza? So it was like, honestly, we were so lucky to have Fugazi, and it allowed for Barroco and Foie Gras to do what they do well, mm-hmm. and focus in that sense and have like, every establishment help one another out in a way throughout all of this, kind of the same way that ACC and Milky Way together, we created, at any given time, anywhere between 8 and 10 different cocktail kits, and they're just always available through any of the restaurants. So it's like you can live in whatever area of Montreal and you'll still be able to access through one of those 4 main sales locations, right? And through whatever vendor that you like or takeaway app that you use, that you feel like using at that time. So it's like everything is available and it allows us to kind of like continue working like that. So I mean, if tomorrow, if it's 6 months down the line, we've reopened and they decide to close us down again, we will be pissed. We will be so mad, but we will very easily once again be able to turn around.
I don't want to take up too much of your time. So on a personal level, what are you looking forward to in the next 6 to 12 months? I know we talked off air about travel again, because this is the longest I've been in Victoria in a decade. And I'm just like, my wife is born and bred here, so she loves the island life. And I love the island life. That's why I live here. But when I travel once every 2 months, it just gets that itch out. Like I get to hang out with like-minded people like yourself and go to crazy trips like that trip to Nicaragua, which was mental. So what's your personal goals for the next 6 to 12 months?
Hug humans. I am such a hugger. And I mean, you have your daughter and your wife, right? I mean, it's exciting when you feel like you need a hug. You have it right there in your home. I don't. So that is one of my first things that I think of. I'm like, okay, I'm getting my second dose on August 26th. I can't wait. September, watch out. Every human. I'm super excited about that. And yeah, I'm so definitely excited to start traveling again, because I know that I'm definitely not alone in this, but it's like that lack of access and variety really has played a really huge part in dampering my creativity and my kind of, like, as you were saying, like that aspect of like conversational, like that conversational aspect of life, right? It's like, what are we talking about? How are we talking about things, and how your train of thought goes, and that all goes hand in hand with maintaining variety in your life. And the fact that, that's, I think, one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to, like knowing that I can go to Toronto on a moment's notice, that I can drive down to New York if and when I want, that I can, see everyone in Puerto Rico in November for Puerto Rico Cocktail Week. Yes. So excited. That, by the way, will probably be my first big away trip.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be in Cognac in September.
See?
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
So it's like all of those little things. I think those are the things that I'm most looking forward to. It's kind of, and I also really can't wait to not talk about this anymore. Like, no, but for real, because it's like, as you said, when we reopen, we're going to have to find really wonderful ways of having great conversation. So it's instead, I think it's going to be about focusing on other people in a way that doesn't necessarily drive back to this one topic, but it's like, oh, how are your kids? I mean, like, a lot of us know all of our regulars. So it's like, how are your kids? Did they pick up any new, I don't know, any new sports or any new
whatever kids do.
What are kids? Or hey, what did you end up doing while you couldn't actually organize weddings? I mean, or pick up any new hobbies. I love, last summer everyone was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm gardening. And then we're talking about my garden, I mean, so I feel like that's going to be the big thing. That's what I'm looking forward to.
I want to thank you for your time. I know that you're crazy busy. So I appreciate you taking the time, and you're one of my favorite people in Canada. You really are. Like, I just love, I love it. And I always feel like we always catch up at the weirdest times too. Like, we know we're going to be at different shows and stuff. And then we like, I think Toronto Cocktail Conference a couple of years ago, we didn't see each other at all at the conference. And then at 2:00 in the morning at Pretty Ugly Bar, outside a Pretty Ugly Bar, and we ran into each other. And I feel like we're always at the same conferences, but never at the same time. But then it's a weird, obscure place on a cocktail bar at 2:00 in the morning. We're like, hey.
Yeah, sounds about right. It was the same thing at Tails, same thing.
Yes, exactly. So thank you so much for your time. This is awesome. And it's nice to catch up, actually.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I'll chat to you very soon.
Yes, and good luck. I look forward to seeing all the wonderful things coming your way.
Well, thanks, Kate. Okay, bye.